I decided to do a part 3 regarding the image of Israel because as I've been rereading Revelation 13, there's one sentence that really sticks out to me that I think is very important that we understand. We already discussed here that the first beast is the Antichrist of counterfeit Christianity, and that the second beast is the false prophet of the kingdom of the United States. And that this false prophet is testifying to counterfeit Christianity. And what counterfeit Christianity has set up, has created, along with the United States, is an image of what Israel is. Israel in Scripture was always those who were descended from Jacob, whose name was changed to Israel. And so anytime the word talked about the land of Israel, it was talking about the land that belonged to God's people. But you remember in Scripture that God's people were driven from that land for disobedience. So there's no longer a land called Israel. We are the land. We are Israel. And we're told that after the resurrection, we will inhabit the land that he gave us, not before. So what Israel has become for counterfeit Christians who do not read the word, and for the false prophet of the United States, who along with Europe created this image of Israel, of counterfeit Israel. So you have to understand that what they are creating is an image of counterfeit Israel, which is God's church. So it is a counterfeit idea of what Israel is. There's symbolism in understanding being descended from Israel and Jacob and being part of that family. There's significance in understanding what it is to be a nation. But the problem is that Paul said not all who are descended from Israel are Israel. Only those who are circumcised in heart, only those who are doing the will of God are included in this group. This is God's people, those who obey. These people are not obeying because God's law says you're not supposed to murder. So you don't get to go out there and just decide that you're tired of waiting for him and you want this land. Not that these people are waiting for him at all. The point about this image is that people don't understand what Israel is. And because they don't understand what Israel is, they have made this about a race issue rather than an issue of a nation being set apart to God. And so they don't go around in their covenant or in their life understanding that they're supposed to be set apart from this world. They are very much a part of this world. Because in their delusion, they think that some ethnic group is going to bear their covenant for them. That when the word says that salvation comes through the Jews, that means that the Jews are going to do this for them, which is ridiculous. Not even the Jews could do this for their own children. The word tells us that very clearly. If these righteous men, not even if Noah, Daniel, and Job were here, could they save their children? They could save only themselves. What makes anyone think that some so-called ethnic nation, which by the way is not even an ethnic nation, I mean there are plenty of different ethnicities identified as being Jews. There are many different ethnicities living in Israel right now as Jews. So this idea and everything that is rolled into this image that counterfeit Christianity and America and Europe have created of what Israel is has a whole gospel around it. It has a whole doctrine. And remember that when God talks about, or when God talks through Paul regarding the great delusion that he's going to send, he says many things. He says that this includes all the ways that wickedness deceives those who are perishing. They perish because they do not love truth. That because they have rejected knowledge, he rejects them as his priests. I'm talking about counterfeit Jews and I'm talking about counterfeit Christians. Those who have the truth available to them, but they reject it. This is what they prefer to believe. And so it's right that they either become part of the Antichrist or part of the false prophet or both, and they are thrown into the lake of burning sulfur. Irreversible. They will not be saved. Here's the sentence that God is drawing me to. It's Revelation 13, verse 15. The second beast, we know the first beast is the Antichrist, second beast is the false prophet. The second beast, false prophet, was given power to give breath to the image of the first beast. So this is actually something that is living. It's not something that is inanimate like a statue or something like that. This is living. The second beast, the false prophet, was given power to give breath to the image of the first beast. So there is this concept of counterfeit Israel, and there is the ability of counterfeit Israel to have breath, to be able to wield some sort of power and influence. The second beast was given power to give breath to the image of the first beast. Okay, you got the first beast, the second beast, and the image of the first beast. What is the first beast? Counterfeit Christianity. The image of the first beast is the image of counterfeit Christianity, counterfeit Israel, so that the image could speak and cause all who refuse to worship the image to be killed. So that the image could speak and cause all who refuse to worship the image to be killed. All right, so actually, the thing that is wielding power in the end is the image of the first beast. That's the thing that is killing everyone. And if it's the image of the first beast, then it is part of the first beast, and that means that it is part of the Antichrist. But this is a very important point here, because we see it being played out right now, that counterfeit Christianity is really giving power to this image, and that the United States, along with Europe, is giving power to this image. And it is actually the image of the Antichrist that everyone is calling God's people. Wow, what an incredible twist. Like, this is blowing my mind. I hope that that you're grasping it. But it is actually the image that is speaking and causing all who refuse to worship the image to be killed. That's Israel, guys. There is no way that I could have known this. There's no way that he could have just unfolded everything all at once. Like, it blows me away the way that he unfolds these things in season. It also forced all people, great and small, rich and poor, free and slave, to receive a mark on their right hands or on their foreheads, so that they could not buy or sell unless they had the mark, which is the name of the beast or the number of its name. And we talked about this in video number 2 or part 2 about what the mark of the beast is, but I have a feeling more will be revealed. Right now, I'm going to stay with what he's revealing, is that the image of the first beast is what is wielding the power. Now, I want you to think about what's happening right now. There is no reason why Netanyahu or Israel should have any influence on what's happening on our college campuses in our country regarding free speech. And yet he is influencing our legislation. He does feel free to, he's very arrogantly felt free to berate our presidents, to lecture them on how things should be. And it's so incredible as I think about it, the counterfeit narrative that has gone around that Israel, that this image of Israel is actually going to be persecuted in the end, because it's God's people who are going to be persecuted by them, by counterfeit Israel, counterfeit Jews. In Revelation 2 and 3, it says, I'm going to make those who claim to be Jews, though they are not, but are of the synagogue of Satan, bow down to you and acknowledge that I have loved you. So Jesus has already told us that this is exactly what's going to happen. I'm going to read the legislation that went into effect on May 1st here in the United States. And this is, I don't love NPR, but look, it was the best article that I could find. I don't think there's any media source that is really straightforward these days, but we're just looking at facts, okay? That's it. The title of the article, House Passes Bill Aimed to Combat Anti-Semitism Amid College Unrest. The House of Representatives passed a bill on Wednesday aimed at addressing reports of rising anti-Semitism on college campuses where activists angered by Israel's war against Hamas. Is this a war against Hamas? I mean, even that statement is really a narrative making, because they're not just waging war against Hamas, they're waging war against defenseless little children. They don't even know how many civilians they've killed. Supposedly they know how many Hamas members they've killed, but they don't know how many children they've killed. They're not keeping track of that. It seems to me that if your interest is in going after Hamas, then you'd be able to account for the civilians, because that wasn't something you wanted to do. And yet, I've heard reports of 34,000, and I've heard other reports of 41,000, so it's somewhere in that range of how many civilians they've killed, and maybe even more by this point. So it says, where activists angered by Israel's war against Hamas have been protesting for months and more recently set up encampments on campus grounds. Now, NPR has historically been left-leaning, so I think it's kind of interesting that now they're kind of adapting the narrative of counterfeit Christianity in the United States. And I would suspect that that's because they're getting pressure to do so, that the United States is essentially saying this is the narrative you need to go by. And also, Netanyahu just banned Al Jazeera from being able to have free speech in Israel. So this kind of seems to be a theme, doesn't it? The Anti-Semitism Awareness Act would see the adoption of the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance's definition of anti-Semitism for the, okay, so they get to set the standard, all right, for the enforcement of federal anti-discrimination laws regarding education programs. So who's running the show here? Who is it that has authority? Because frankly, Bibi has become a thorn in Joe Biden's side right now during election year. That's why he keeps flippity-flopping, because his party is divided against him. He's getting heat from the evangelicals. He's being called out by Donald Trump. He doesn't know which way to go. Good on God for putting him in that position, really. Because up to this point, he's just done whatever pads his pockets. You know, previously he took a stance on LGBT issues and the preservation of marriage, even though we know some stories about his marriage bearing out of affair. But hey, he just kind of rolled with the times, didn't he? Partying it up with pagans, calling himself Christian. So now for God to put him in this position during an election year is like hilariously brilliant. The bill passed with a 320 to 91 vote. 70 Democrats and 21 Republicans voted against the measure. What do you think that this just did? It just gave breath to that image to influence our legislation and what goes on here in this country. So those of you who are sitting around wondering if this is the time, are we there yet? Is what Carrie has been saying, is it true? Or is she delusional? Because, hey, I'd be asking the same question, I understand. I'm not offended by that, but I will say, if you don't ask God about this, if you don't go back and discern this with him, it just might cost you your salvation. And I'm going to say that it will. Because you need to love him enough to go back and discern the things that his servants are saying. This is happening. Please go and discern this with God.